all of that was going to sap productivity in a time where we needed productivity to increase. Was in the military for 6 years, and then I went into the software industry. 40 years in the technology industry, seeing a lot of growth and change, a lot of initiatives, and a lot of fabulous people. The core idea is stop convincing, start connecting and inspiring. There are two ingredients in my mind which really can make the difference, even when you have a mediocre strategy, and that's having excellent people that have strong connections and alignment in what they do, and then having inspiring communications, compelling communications where people align with the purpose and want to come along with you.
Welcome to the podcast From Cold to Close. My name is Saeed and I'm the founder of SLC Growth Partner, a company that works with professional service firms from around the world to help them increase their revenue and profitability by acquiring new clients. My guest today is John Geraci. John is a graduate of United States Military Academy and former Army Ranger. He was a technology executive involved in several growth companies and large change initiatives. He believes great people and effective communication are two critical keys to high performance. Ci2 Advisors is an advanced communication coaching company that dramatically shifts how people think about and build stronger human connections, inspiring others to achieve more with compelling stories. John, great to have you on the pod. Nice to have you.
Great to be here. Thank you for that introduction. My goodness, I hope I can live up to it.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. To all the viewers out there, I've spoken to John previously a couple of occasions, and my first ever conversation with him was to do a research project in preparing a white paper. And I found what he said so compelling, so good, that I had to come back for more. So I reached out to John again. We tried to get him onto the podcast. So hopefully you guys can get a taste of some of the things that he was able to share on the first time we spoke. John, I find that the best place to start off with any podcast is a bit about yourself, a bit of an origin story. So could you share to the viewers and the listeners, could you give a brief background on your journey to where you are today, the current role you play in the business, and what led you to start Ci2 Advisors?
Sure, that's a great question, Saeed. Thank you. So I was from a military family. I went to the United States Military Academy at West Point, was in the military for 6 years. So they consider the United States Military Academy the premier leadership institution in the United States. An early age from my father, and then there I was imbued with leadership and thinking about people and yourself and growth and how do you get things done. Was in the military for 6 years, and then I went into the software industry. And I went into sales role, became sales manager, regional manager. I had a stint in Europe for a couple of years. I came back, I ran several companies, a couple of public companies, and then I left. So 40 years in the technology industry, seeing a lot of growth and change, a lot of initiatives, and a lot of fabulous people. I mean, the thing that drew me to the technology industry, like the military, you had very committed, passionate people who wanted to get things done, and it was exciting. But along my journey, if you think about successful companies and successful people, sales teams, etc., usually the company has a good strategy. Companies with bad strategies eventually fall off the cliff, but they have a good strategy. But also there are two ingredients in my mind which really can make the difference, even when you have a mediocre strategy, and that's having excellent people that have strong connections and alignment in what they do, and then having inspiring communications, compelling communications where people align with the purpose and want to come along with you. And when I left the corporate world, I was trying to think of something to do, what I wanted to do. And I went to a seminar, it was a futuristic seminar, and it was about macro trends. And the two things that hit me that were takeaways for me was that there were, and this was 11, 12 years ago, that there were a number of disruptive technologies that were moving very, very fast. So we all know about Web 3.0, we know about the cloud. We didn't know about Snowflake and hybrid databases, and we didn't know about data lakes, and we didn't know about IoT. We knew a little bit about AI, machine learning, but the thought process was that the world was going to speed up and we were going to have to be moving faster to execute and to serve our customers and do things. The second thing, that macro trend that hit me, was that there are multiple generations in the workforce. And although at the human level, we're somewhat the same, the experiences I've had as a baby boomer are completely different than you as a millennial or Gen Z. And how that manifests itself, I might say some things. I might say something that is normal to me that you don't think is normal. You may say something that is normal that I don't get. I thought about that, and what those two things, it made me think that the world of work was going to speed up. People are going to be harried. Priorities were going to change. There were going to be all of these technologies bombarding you with communication. And what was going to happen is a breakdown in communication, misunderstanding, miscommunication, and personal connections. And all of that was going to sap productivity in a time where we needed productivity to increase. And that, I started doing a bunch of research on it, and we studied, believe it or not, we did 3 years of both field and secondary research. And our breakthrough ideas came from the intersection of behavioral economics and neuroscience. Neuroscience is how does your brain think? And behavioral economics is really a science of how do people make decisions. Now, if we start thinking about getting people to move with you, how do they do things, right? Whether it's in sales and you're trying to help them along a sales or a buying journey, or if it's in a company. And we found 3 breakthrough ideas about that. And we thought if we could develop some models that would help people understand these ideas and shift their communication and human connections in terms of how they communicate, could we make a difference? And over the last 7 years, we've trained hundreds of companies. We're coaching, group learning, hundreds of companies and thousands of individuals on our models, which I think they're slightly innovative and they're more relevant for a dynamic workforce in a rapidly changing world, this digital revolution. So what really motivates me, Said, is in all of the journey that I've had, I like to accomplish the mission, whether it's in the military, companies, but what I really love to see people grow and change. I really love hiring, growing, seeing young people exceed anything I could do. That's kind of been, I don't, somewhere in there, that's been a passion of mine. So what really gets me excited now about what we do is when I see people grasping onto learning some new concepts, some innovative concepts, changing the way they do things and getting dramatic results.
You've touched on some really interesting points there, and I think one of my favorite things that you mentioned there was the value of communication between the generations, right? And so often are we in situations where we're having to deal with someone from a different generation saying something that you might not be 100% comfortable with, but it's not necessarily for want of not wanting to hear it. It's just the fact that the communication, the language, whatever it is, it hasn't landed in the right way, right? And so that's a really interesting point there, because once people can figure out how to communicate well, and communication, they say it all the time, whether you're in a relationship, whether you're in a marriage, whether you're in a friendship, whether you're in a workplace, being able to articulate and communicate clearly is one of the most important skills you could have in any walk of life. So I think I'm really looking forward to hearing more about what you have to say today. But in terms of Ci2 Advisors, tell me more about who you are, what you're doing with your clients, your customers within those group coaching environments.
We're a learning and a coaching company, and we work with individuals and we work with companies. And with individuals, what we're trying to do is help them significantly improve their productivity. And we basically, we have 3 models that we use that are at the core of all of our stuff. And they're based on those 2 dynamics of neuroscience and behavioral economics. But we have something we call dynamic relationship model. So that's how do you interact with people and in a conversation and in a relationship. And the thing we bring to the party is that it's dynamic and it's ever changing. And you've got to be more consistent and constant in thinking about it. Where am I in this conversation? And then the other 2 pieces we bring to it is something we call business storytelling. So how do you tell a story instead of, one of the principles of breakthrough ideas is about the subconscious mind is that past the age of 6, nobody likes to be told what to do. And certainly today, if you think about a lot of your listeners are sales teams or marketing teams, and we believe the idea of convincing, persuading, and influencing people is not nearly as effective. It probably was never a really great way to go, but it's not nearly effective today because the buyer has all of the information. They can get all of the information about your company, about you, about what you do, about your customers. So what we really believe, what we teach is instead of convincing people, we say stop convincing, start connecting and inspiring. And so how do you inspire people? And so what we do is we apply these models uniquely. And particularly in the corporate world, we can do an engagement around sales teams to help interface with their customers and be more compelling. We can help services teams. And if you think we can help product management teams, and we help executive leadership teams predominantly on accelerating either strategic initiatives or digital transformations. And the core of that idea is How do they shift, understand how their brain, the subconscious mind works in you and me? And how I learn to communicate more effectively to inspire you to come along with me? Or if I can't, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
You can't bludgeon people into, and some of it is similar to a lot of the communication theories that you would know and the simplistic models, but we've built on top of that. And a lot of times in sales engagements, we're turbocharging your methodology because I kind of tell people we're a how-to company. How do you make that sales call? How do you interact with that person? How does a BDR get on the phone and in 20 seconds tell a compelling story? So we're in services, PM, product management, and marketing, which is a big market for us. If you look at product managers and even engineers, we've trained a lot of engineering companies. They're very competent and factual and knowledgeable about what they do. However, the way they communicate it doesn't inspire people to come along with them. So I always say they may be right, but they're not effective. When we work with corporations in a bit large engagement, what we help them find out, the executives find out, what is the business outcome you're trying to achieve? And then what are the metrics that would help us discover whether, and we actually incorporate in corporate engagements, we give a money back guarantee. And because we help them measure and prove that the activities that we're helping you improve accelerate a process and deliver business outcomes, revenue, cost reduction, productivity increase, or speed. A lot of times people are looking for speed. How do I get this project done faster? On the individual world, in our opens and in our coaching and with our AI story builder, what we're doing is helping teams communicate more effectively so they can be a stronger manager or individual contributor. So it's more of a one-to-one versus a one-to-many engagement, but it's all around productivity and business performance, productivity and relationship performance, right? And so that's the, we've had really big customers like SAP. And I've worked with a company out on the West Coast called Cars. They're a non-for-profit that services, helps other nonprofits make money.
Okay.
So we work the gamut internationally, et cetera. If you look on our website, we have a profile of our best customers. And I say they have to be, number one, people-oriented leaders.
Yeah.
Generally, we're working with either technology or consulting companies because those companies need to have long-term relationships with somebody.
Yeah.
Now, if it's an internal application, it could be anybody. And then what we look for is, do they really believe that there's some constraint variable, some breakage in communication, integration, something not happening cross-functionally? A lot of our engagements are cross-functional communication.
Sure.
You have a big break between product marketing and sales. You have a big break between sales and services. So how do you help them communicate more effectively so you can speed cycle time? But do they have a business problem? Do we think we can actually solve that business problem and deliver business results? Not let's do training or let's do an engagement intervention. So that's kind of the construct of our work. And we work both one-to-one and we work one-to-many.
Sure. And that makes a lot of sense. And even the fact that you mentioned a money back guarantee, it's clearly a clear sign of your confidence in how you're able to deliver the results. And it also means that it incentivizes you to not take on the wrong engagements, right? Because that's a guarantee right there where you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to even go into this engagement. There's not a problem that we can solve here. And if we're going in there and we don't solve that problem, that's money out of our pockets rather than anything else, right?
You probably have worked with a lot of software companies. That's where I came up from after the military. And we used to say, in terms of implementations, why do implementations fail? And we say it's about commitment. We used to tell the joke, the chicken was involved, the pig was committed. A lot of why we started issuing the money back guarantee, one is that when people are spending 100, 150, 200,000 over a couple of years, they want to know what their outcomes. But in helping the executives really define what's their goal and what are the metrics, the revenue, the business metrics, and then the KPIs, which are the process outcomes and the activities that lead to that, what we find is they get more committed to making it happen and the communication gets clearer. So in one sense, it's a risk. Yes, it helps us in a project, but I think those companies who want that, they really get committed. And it's that extra commitment which actually makes it happen.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And even from my personal experience, our best clients are those that are more committed. And those that are more committed tend to be the ones that know what targets that they need to reach, what they're trying to achieve. And when you have those things to achieve for, things become more clear. And clarity is the cure to so many bottlenecks in a business. Once you have clarity and you have the insights, then you go, okay, this is all we need to do. This is the activity that we need to make sure we're doing to ensure that these outcomes are met. So that's a really interesting point there. In terms of then Ci2 Advisors and yourself, what are the core principles behind your theories? Because you've got your frameworks and things like that. What are the core principles?
Well, foundation idea is that people and communications matter. So human connections or human relationships matter. And if you don't believe that, there are many executives that's okay, who believe that, I can put in a great strategy and I can just throw people at it. It doesn't matter. You would not want to buy from us, because we believe, not only do I believe, but it's been my part of the successes that I've had has always been committed people who are communicating well in strong relationships, right? Because when you have a strong relation, go back to the example you gave about, I say something, what happens is, and I'll come back in a second, when I say something that you disagree with, what happens in your subconscious mind, it triggers an emotional construct which you have from a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right? Now, and so now you might react from it. Okay. And what we help people understand is that could happen, but in the subconscious mind does not deal in facts and figures. The subconscious mind deals in emotions, pictures, and stories. So if I said something that you thought was egregious, right? What we teach people to do, okay, well, now slow down a little bit. And you may say, John, I'm not sure I agree with that. What your natural trigger will be is to disagree, depending on your personality style, and either fight or flight. And what we teach people to do is say, wait a minute, so now this is what your subconscious brain tells you. How about slowing down? And if I said to you, Saeed, I'm not sure I agree with that, but can you step back and tell me why? And if you think about disagreements interpersonally and nationally, et cetera, we're so quick to assume the worst and not really understand. So our principles are based on, first of all, you have to believe in people, that people can make a difference in your business, and effective communication and relationships are the way to get people moving forward, right? That's the core. The second thing that our theories come from is 3 breakthrough ideas in neuroscience and behavioral economics. And they are basically, simplistically, I won't explain them to you in detail, but one of them is that your subconscious brain is about 80% of what's happening in your brain. And you're not conscious of it. That's why it's called subconscious. And your conscious brain deals in facts and figures, and it can think in terms of chunks of data 3, 5, 7, 9. Your subconscious brain is a huge data lake. It has all of the information that has ever been acquired in your life, and it's stored and it's brought up based on how emotional the situation with you, good, bad, or indifferent. And the point we make is most of us are not talking to the subconscious brain. In what behavioral economics will tell you, that 80% of individual decision making comes from their subconscious brain. It's rationalized in the conscious. Now, groups are different. But if you understood that, and say some of your sales customers or marketing customers, are you talking PowerPoints and facts and figures to the conscious brain? Or do you have some way to engage with the subconscious brain? So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is that we're all bad listeners. Our subconscious brain causes us all to be bad listeners. And a lot of listening theory talks about active listening and this and that and that. And we think if you just stop to realize we are all bad listeners, because our subconscious brain moves 5 to 7 times faster than your conscious brain. And if you understand that, you can really deploy some different ideas and thought processes, how you can change the game. We call it transformational listening, on how you can change the game where your listener really feels heard and they want to come along with you. And it's when you can't do that in every engagement, in every conversation, but when you have that kind of interaction with somebody and you get into deep, and I won't tell you how we do it, but that's a core construct. And then the third construct is that nobody likes to be told what to do. I told you that.
Yeah.
And so trying to convince or persuade or cajole people. They don't have time. And so what you really need to do is spend time understanding them at a much deeper level, and then determining to them, can I tell them a story about somebody else like them? Can I tell you a story about another founder who was serving consulting companies from a marketing and sales standpoint, helping to gain customers, who succeeded with my framework, where you could say, I don't want to hear about all your stuff. I want to be like that guy. So, and if you can't do that, and you might need to tell the story 4 or 5 times, but if you can't do that, you can't compel them to come with you, alongside of you, and sell with you or align with you or purpose with you, then you need to spend your time somewhere else. But it's the core idea is stop convincing, start connecting and inspiring. And then, of course, our models are based on that. And then our training curriculum and how we train people, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. But that's really the core idea: people, communications, those 3 breakthrough ideas, and then how do you implement that in a way where one of the things we talk to people about in a corporate world, I ask them this when they're, prospect or customers asking me, I ask them, are you looking for training or behavioral change?
Love it.
Because a lot of companies are training, and people go to 2 days of training and they walk away and they don't do anything different. And which kind of led us to our AI tool. But let me stop there in terms of what's different about us. I think we're based on some innovative theories around the intersection of neuroscience and behavioral that we've only uncovered in the last 15 years. So we didn't know this without the fMRI. And then that led us to 3 breakthrough ideas. And those ideas led us to, how do you engage with people more dynamically today, this digital world, to be more effective as an individual and a company and a team?
Absolutely. I think that's a key thing you mentioned right there. It's like in a digital world, right? And we're in a digital world, and it sounds to me like the best leaders are doing what you are saying they should do, right? Everyone hears it. Oh, you look at the Steve Jobs or the CEOs that everyone looks up to. They inspire. They communicate with people, and they don't try and convince and badger people. They bring them along in the journey, right? And I love that because it's spot on, right? And if you're able to create lots of mini Steve Jobs, and obviously I'm using Steve Jobs as a big example, but if you're able to create lots of mini Steve Jobs over different departments within an organization, well, then you can give yourself a real opportunity for scale and opportunities to grow as an organization. So I think it's really interesting. In terms of then your successful customers, tell the listeners about some of your successful customers. What are the outcomes from there?
Let me start with individuals, because I love to see individuals grow and I love to see the teams grow. But what we hear consistently from individuals who either we coach, use our tool, or go to some of our training is, number one, they get some aha moments about human relationships and communications they didn't know before. That's number one. Number two, I hear they're excited and passionate about applying these actively in the workforce. So one of the things we talk about in how we've constructed our learning, in a corporation, if they did our learning model, they can use it the next day. So it's not like they feel passionate and engaged. And what they tell me year, 2 years, 6 months later, 6 months, a year, 2 years, they tell me my productivity has increased dramatically and I still use this stuff. So that's from an individual standpoint. From a company standpoint, it's all centered around what do they want to accomplish. And I'll give you 3 quick examples. So one of our first early adopter customers was a division of SAP. And the champion was the senior vice president, chief customer officer. And he had about 80 high-end consultants who worked with their largest customers. And they would drop in when things were going wrong and tell them how to fix it. They weren't handling enough projects, and they were going in and having failure rates. And so we worked with them really on deep understanding of the customer. And a lot of times when you're in a difficult conversation, if you and I disagree, part of me trying to understand you is letting you get the emotion out. So now we can get the logic. And we worked with them for about 3 years. And over that 3-year time, what Steve will tell you is his 3 metrics were, he wanted to be able to triple the number of projects they had with the same people, which he did. He wanted his team to build trusted advisor relationships with key customers. So when a CIO was thinking about something, they would call his guy first before they called the sales rep.
Okay.
And then third, he wanted to uncover business opportunities and pass those to the sales teams. And he will tell you over the 7 years that he implemented our stuff, they were able to pass on over $1 billion worth of potential business to the SAP sales teams. So that's an engagement, and it's centered around what's the business outcome he was looking for. I'll tell you two quick others. One was a company that was a government consulting company, a company called ATI. They were doing government consulting projects, but really small $5 to $10 million projects. And they got a new CEO, and the sales team were professionals. They were actually ex-military, most of them ex-military, and they were business development and didn't like sales. And he brought in a sales methodology, and they rejected it out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't execute.
Yeah.
And so this guy happens to be a friend of mine. He called me and we chatted, and they implemented our framework around relationships with a focus on how do you take a $5 million project and ask the right kind of questions to see if that's really a 200 or a 300. The team they just took off. First of all, they adopted this because this is all about understanding people. It's not about sales tricks. It's not about convincing somebody. It's understanding them and then relating stories. They took to it really, really well. And over the 7 years he was there, he took the company from 100 million to 500 million. And he took the backlog from 200 million to 1.2 billion. And today that company's a $6 billion company. So that's a sales execution really around communicating with customers in a different way. Then the last one I'll tell you, it's a company called the Advanced Society for Materials Engineers. And they were in a digital transformation, and they're a society, and the big revenue generator they printed a large engineering book that materials engineers would use in manufacturing plants for stuff. And they had a lot of baby boomers as their customer base. They had 80,000 members, and their customer base was going down because the boomers were retiring and the Gen Z and millennials were not joining. Wow. And they were trying to move to a digital transformation, and they failed twice. And they brought in a new CEO who somehow he found out about us through another reference, and we went in. And it turned out that the failure of the transformation was all about passive resistance to change. And the two other CEOs were why change story. And they were telling what would happen to the board and not what would happen to the consultants and the engineers. And we went in and worked with that company to help them understand why was the product that they were delivering to baby boomers not the right product. And it was really funny because one of the things we did was a skit. They did a skit of the juxtaposition of the two. And they showed an old man like me coming out with a cane with a book in a plant floor and saying, oh, and then the millennial looking at his phone and said, where's this stuff on my phone? I'm not going back to the office and looking at a book. What we helped them do is understand what's happening in your customer base. The two CEOs were telling them, oh, the company's not doing well. You guys don't know what you're doing. Instead of saying, hey, the real problem is our market is shifting and we have to shift. And then we helped them all craft called My Why Change Story. So why would I want to be part of this change management? And over that time, and then we helped them build internal hero stories about people doing things right. Anyway, they failed for 4 years, and this guy came in, he had a 3-year time frame, and he had $6 million to do it. They crossed the digital divide in 18 months and half the cost.
Wow.
And it just got everybody aligned and on fire and working together. Those are use cases that are very specific to what's the business problem that an organization is trying to solve. And the execution is how do you execute the model in a way where this company culturally can accept it and execute it. But those are kind of 3 examples: a sales example, a services example, and a digital transformation example of types of customers.
I love it. And I think it's really interesting how each of those circumstances apply your teachings and your theories, but the business problem is different, and therefore the solution has to be different, right? And that's the key there. It's not a one size fits all. You come in, you understand the problems, you remedy what the problems are, and that comes down to whether understanding people as well, right? And it's that thing you mentioned where people think logically, and it reminds me of the saying, people make decisions emotionally and justify them logically, right? And it's so true. Like, people are passively won't accept change, as you mentioned, or the BDRs, who are business development people, don't accept sales. It's a similar thing, but business development is looked at as a relational, long-term thing, whereas sales is like the sleazy salesman tactics type of thing. It can hit values, right? It can hit on people's values, and yeah.
One of the things that I personally believe, and I think I've been guilty of it over time, as being a president of a large public company, you kind of get synthesized to people expect you to be an infallible leader. And I think that's now, as I reflect and as I look back, and the times I was most effective was when I was vulnerable and authentic. And it's one of the things we teach people in how do you connect? You have to connect with vulnerability, which is not, and just an example, if you think about Microsoft and you look at the old CEO, I won't tell you his name, and the new CEO. The new CEO came in with a much different style, a much different collaborative way of thinking, a much high performance, but collaborative, inspiring. Microsoft stock language for 10 years.
Mm.
And this new CEO has turned the company upside down.
Mm.
And they're almost a growth company now, right? And yes, there's technology. And yes, I believe that if you're vulnerable with me and you're authentic and you're not fluffy,
Mm.
I connect with you more effectively and
Mm.
I will tell you more. And
Mm.
that's what you want to get. However, it's not normal it hasn't been normal in the workforce. It's shifting somewhat with empathy and understanding, et cetera. But people go in and they want to tell you how great they are and how great their company is. And
Yeah.
what I want to know is, how can you help me, Saeed? And so it's a slight shift. We have these 6 prompts in our transformational listening model we teach people. And one of them is, how do you feel about that? Tell me how you feel about that. It's the biggest pushback we get. And people say, I would never ask that question. I
Mm.
can tell you story after story, because I normally say, Saeed, don't ask it. If you feel
Mm.
uncomfortable, don't ask it. What I'll tell you is, when we made this up, I thought I didn't want to ask it either. And now I
Mm.
ask it all the time. And you will be amazed at what people tell you when they hear that. And I can tell you example about people have said, well, a guy was selling signage to McDonald's. At the end
Mm.
of a meeting, he said, he's an early adopter customer of ours, and he said to him, hey, Saeed, I'm getting ready to leave, but tell me, you got some new executives. Tell me how you guys feel about our company, what we're doing. And the guy sat back in the chair and he said, Tony, I never would have told you this story if you hadn't asked me that. We're getting ready to throw you out. We're
Wow.
so unhappy with your service. It was a $10 million contract.
Wow. Wow.
So my point is, vulnerability and authenticity and humility, they're really strong traits that can differentiate you, but they're not normal. That's not what
Yeah.
people teach. They teach you to be
Yeah.
the strong leader, the tough leader, the
Yeah.
you know it all leader, and that's not the world. Anyway.
Yeah. I love everything you said there. And one of the things that keeps coming back in our conversation is the ability to communicate in the right way. And you've mentioned storytelling a number of occasions. And even in our previous conversations, you've mentioned the power of storytelling and the power of stories. I know that you mentioned that you've built out an AI story builder. Can you share some more about that and tell us more about exactly what that is and what's involved?
Yeah, well, you're a technology executive and you work with a lot of consulting and technology companies, and I was a technology executive on the sales side. I know enough technology to be somewhat dangerous, but what I believe is we're all technology companies today. And if you're not deploying technology effectively, you're going to go get behind in terms of productivity. So we embraced AI early. Luckily, we have a partnership with Zoom, and used their AI companion. But we started using AI. And the original problem I was trying to solve is one of the things that happens when you leave a learning environment. So whether you're in a group of 3, a one-on-one or whatever, how do you practice and rehearse that
Mhm.
on a real-time ongoing basis? And so I have an IT guy who's got a company. And so we started he started building some models. And basically what we've done is, in our large language model or small language model, I don't know what you want to call it, we have all of our core ideas and constructs. What I think today, it was originally an idea was help people rehearse. But today we're on version 4.
Mm.
And today what we have is an ability for you to write and build stories. We have different kinds of stories that each group, but 2 of the things that your audience will like in this story map is we have not only a customer story,
Mm.
but we have in the model is the difference of how would you tell that story to an executive. So
Mm.
how do you build the executive story, which most sales teams, most service teams, most people, they struggle to communicate with executives. Then another thing we have is a prospect story.
Mm.
So you can put in what you know about the prospect, and the tool will come back and tell you, here's information you don't know. And so you can build a story, number 1. And we have a scoring mechanism where the tool will go out and compare it against 2,000 of our perfect stories. And it'll come back and give you a score, and then you can edit it.
Oh, wow.
So there's a way you can build, and what our customers tell us, if I were building a customer hero story, it might take me 20 to 30 minutes.
Mhm.
And I can do it today between 10 and 15 minutes. Number one, it's a more compelling story,
Yeah.
right? Number one. The second function, so I look at this today as an accelerated learning platform to become a master communicator. And you can build a story, then you can library it. And so now let's say in your organization, you had a story about a customer, you have a new person come in, right? They can talk to you, they can go call the customer, or they can read this story. So you have a library of shared resources. And we're seeing now across product management and sales and marketing, and even they're integrating their messaging. So somebody comes out with an innovative product. How do I tell the stories to arm the salespeople?
Wow.
And then once I implement, how do the salespeople put the business outcomes back in? Because in sales, you're talking about the vision of the outcome.
Yeah.
And it's only when the project is done, right? And so you have a library that you can share across an organization. And then the third function we've just released is a story coaching function. And so what can happen now is you have that story. So let's say you have a new person coming into your company and you say, I want you to go read these 5 stories. And now they can go to the library, read it. They can hit the story coaching function, and they can do one of 2 categories of things. They can record the story as I would tell it to you or somebody, the person, and the tool will coach them on how do you improve that story.
Wow.
The other thing you can do is you can say to the tool, hey, tell this story to a CFO in 90 seconds. The tool will craft a different story for you.
Wow.
And so it's a real-time practice and rehearsal. But I look at it today, it's not just a practice tool. It's an accelerated learning tool that accelerates how you learn. And now we're working it into our workshops where people are using it in the workshop and in the learning. But it accelerated learning, then it's a library, a common library. You can share it across organizations. And then you can help people practice. You're going out on a meeting or you're preparing for a meeting, because one of the things we all struggle with is time. You said that earlier, time. And in today's world, whether you're in sales, service, or whatever, if you get on the phone with me, if I'm a prospective customer or even a customer, and it doesn't go well, I don't give you any more time. And so we believe one of the things that people have constantly got to be doing better is rehearsing. You know, when I first started as a sales guy a long time ago, almost didn't rehearse. We thought we were good. Today, you better rehearse. You better morph the story. So this is a real-time rehearsal tool, and you can get feedback from, tell this to a CEO or tell this to a VP of services. And so, but that's what, we've kind of morphed from an initial idea, and we've had several early adopters. We have about, we have 2 customers on it using it as an organization. And we have about 50, it's early into our model, 50 early adopter individual users who are using it. We're gathering feedback all the time. And of course, that technology is moving. So the next big thing is agents. It's a very exciting. And what I find is, and I need to slow down and let you get some air, let me take a breath. But what I find is people are excited about learning using the AI tool and how it can coach you individually.
Yeah.
You
I think that's really interesting. And I think that's one of the most exciting parts about AI being introduced to the masses, right? We've only had a few years of it just being introduced. You've got ChatGPT and then everything that followed from it. And you're seeing now a few years in, like there are more adopters to it, there are people Googling, instead of Googling, they're going on ChatGPT to search something, right? And it's really changing the way people think. And so having something like this, and it's actually really interesting because stories are something that a lot of people wish they could tell more of, right? And the best communicators always tell phenomenal stories. And they always seem to be able to just pull a story out and you go, wow. And they captivate the audience or the people that they're with in a group scenario. So to have a tool that can help someone actually create their own stories based off of information that they know, because everyone's got information, but generating a story from the information you know is the art form, right? And being able to give the opportunity to more people, that's a gift in itself, and that's a real powerhouse. So I think that's really interesting and really exciting to be able to hear that. Obviously, yeah.
I'm pretty excited about it because what I've learned, I thought at the beginning that it was a back-end part of our process that would supplement coaching and learning. And what I realize now, it should be on the front end. It's really an accelerated learning platform.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so helping people you said something about it always seems like, they can pull a story out. Well, I know a lot of great storytellers, and I asked them, one of the questions, how did you get to be good? And every one of them will tell you about some background, some mentor, but that they practice, they practice, they practice, they practice. And you find people who aren't good at it. They don't have a trajectory. They don't know the flow of a story. And all of our storytelling is based on Joseph Campbell. He wrote a book called The Hero's Journey, and we've simplified it. But how do you tell the trajectory? And we're talking about why change stories, not, hey, we're sitting around the bar having a beer.
Yeah, of
But
course.
what about change? But what's the trajectory of a story? And then how do you make it really compelling? And we've honed in on, we believe there are 3 sections where you can make it a lot more compelling, but you need to practice it.
Yeah.
You can't just do it once, and
Yeah.
you've got to practice, and you've got to know. We teach people in the cohort group, sales, pre-sales, whatever. There's about 5 or 6 stories you have to have in your arsenal and practicing them. And the science of storytelling is knowing the arc. And the art of storytelling is telling it in a compelling way to the right person at the right time. And both of those are important. And people think, oh, Abraham Lincoln was just good at it. Oh, no, he wasn't. He practiced for 10 years. Oh, Steve Jobs, he just made it up. Oh, no, he wasn't. Whoever your hero of storytelling, you go ask them, how do you get, they didn't say, oh, I was really great at this.
Yeah.
Some of them are.
Yeah.
Some, but the great masses of them who are really good, they've honed it and practiced it and learned it. And I believe I was a lieutenant in the Army, and then I was the president of a public company. So I think as you go up and scale, as you scale in your career, your need for improving your communications capabilities exponentiate. And the higher you go, the better a communicator you need to be. And so it's a skill that advanced skill you've constantly got to be working at.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And it reminds me of comedians, right? So a comedian, when they're a big time comedian, let's say Kevin Hart, right? He does a massive show wherever it might be. He will have had to go through hundreds of smaller shows, telling a joke and not working out, finding out where the laughs are, refining it to the point where that 1 hour show that you see, it's a story. In his mind, it's a story. He knows the flow. He knows the ebbs and flows. He knows when the crowd should laugh, when they shouldn't, when they'll be a bit taken aback. And that's the key there, right? He's not just got to that stage from nowhere. He's done 100 in the background to refine it, hone it, sharpen the axe, as they say. So yeah.
And I think, I mean, you're quite younger than me, but I can tell you in the old days when I started selling, you could make a mistake and recover. Implementing, you can make a mistake and recover. Today's world, people are so busy that if you make a mistake, you're not rehearsing, you don't know the right, you're not engaging with people the right way, you're not adjusting your communication, you can't recover because they're too busy and they just move on. If you don't, people they want a strong human connection, but they also want value and insights. And so I just think it's so much more dynamic today. It's so much harder that I say people who aren't looking at, kind of something like what we do, improving their communication and human relationship skills, they're going to be left behind because AI without human skills and communication, AI with human skills and communication, you're going to be a powerhouse.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. Fantastic. We got a tradition in this podcast where we have a second section, a segment where we call the Entrepreneur's Room before we bow out in the podcast. And there's a series of questions that we ask all our guests to give the listeners and viewers the best idea of how entrepreneurs think. So the first question I like to ask in this section is, how do you currently spend your days in the business as a leader of the business?
Well, the first thing you do is as an entrepreneur, you get an idea. I told you the germ of the idea, and then I found a passion to say, I think I can solve this. And, for the first 3 years, we were doing research. And I funded it, so had some. Then you get into execution. It's kind of like projects and large projects. When you're talking about the project, it's interesting. Then when you have to deliver. And early on, I was doing everything. I mean, I was out talking to customers. I was building the training. I wrote the book. And now as you scale, I have multiple managing partners now, have client partners, and I engage, I actually balance my time. I think about 4 things when I prioritize my time. I think about people first, either customers, prospects, or my team. Do I need to interact with this week to make a difference, to help them, whatever? Then I think about, is there a customer that needs something? We've got to improve. Is there a prospect that needs something? And then think about the long term for our company. The last year and a half, I've spent a lot of time on, we've just moved to open workshops, a different framework of how we engage in this AI tool. And so you move to projects that are more long term. And So it's a balance, and a lot of it depends, as you know, we're not a huge company. I've run some huge companies, but we're not a huge company. You also got to look at what's the strengths and weaknesses of your people and what fit are they. But the thing I would say is, you start doing everything.
Mm.
And as you scale, you do less and less of the tactical operational execution, and you do more of what I call it short term versus long term. You do more of the stuff that I'm thinking about 18 months from now, 2 years from now, not what happens this quarter or next quarter. Yeah, and again, that elongates depending upon the scale of your organization.
I think that's spot on. And I think I've spoken to many business owners doing this podcast, and they say a very similar thing. They spend their time working on the day to day, but there has to be a proportion of their time looking in the future, right, and strategizing. What are the most important metrics for you when you're looking at the business? What is it that you're looking at?
I look at a couple things. Predominantly, I look at, one of the major things, do I have the right people? And if you don't have the right, I've got 2 managing partners. I'm just bringing on a third, and they're all phenomenal in their niche. And early on, I brought in 2 people that weren't the right fit. And so it's alignment. And so getting the right people in. I think you have to always be thinking about customer value. Customer value. Are you delivering value to And I look at when we help one of the advanced conversations we help people is the value conversation. And we talk about value at the individual level, at the manager level, and at the executive level. We talk about activity, process, but you've got to be thinking about, are you delivering value to your customers? So I think about that a lot. And are they happy what could I learn? I was on a call today where I had major feedback from somebody. I want to tell me all the bad things. What could I do better? But I think as a entrepreneur, key, and it depends on how much funding you have, and I self-funded, it's revenue and cash flow. And cash is king, and revenue and cash flow. And, what are the interim steps? So do you get your invoices out, et cetera? But at the top level, it's how much revenue have you brought in and how much cash do you have, and then, because then can you afford the right people? So, I mean, that's when I think about the company, those are the things I think about: people, customer value, and then does that lead to monetization and cash?
Yeah. Cash is oxygen in a business, right? That's how you get through the days. Couldn't agree more.
Especially if you're self-funding.
Yeah, of course, I can imagine. Without a doubt, without a doubt. Couple more questions today. How are you currently growing your business? Obviously, there's different strategies out there, and your sales organization you've worked in, but obviously working in big organizations versus smaller organizations, there's a difference there. How are you currently, what are the strategies you're using to grow your business at the moment?
We have a go-to-market, which you would think normal. A go-to-market, so LinkedIn to blah, blah, to emails to outbound to blah, blah, all that stuff. But we have traditionally grown on referrals of referrals. And we are rethinking how we grow. And internally, I call it networks of networks.
Okay.
And it's one of the reasons we went to open workshops. Before open workshops, I probably couldn't have worked with you as a customer because we would take a workshop of a minimum of 20 people. You may not have 20 people yet. So now I could bring you in as an individual. And what we do with the individual, we make sure they get value. We coach them with this tool. We ask them to post on LinkedIn, and we give their network a discount if they want to come.
Wow.
So it's a model. We just started this last year, and it's just starting the flywheel is just starting, but I call it network of networks. And how do I get 5 or 6 or 7 people that who come to us, and then I get 5 or 6 or 7 people that they know. And what we're finding is that with this model, before you couldn't engage with us unless it was like 40 grand.
Yeah.
Today you can come to an open workshop for $400.
Wow.
And what we're finding now, you only get a part of what we do, but you get an important part. But what we're also finding is that people go from like a large company. I was talking to a lady today. She went to a large company. She says, I'm talking to my VP about bringing this in to the whole organization. So now we have a warm champion in the company. So that's the model we're trying to use. We do still get active deals we have a lot of outbound marketing stuff. I struggle, and this is your domain, but I struggle with everybody seems to be doing all the same thing.
Yeah.
And all the consultants are asking, write innovative content, use it with AI. Well, everybody else is doing that.
Yeah.
Well, buy these lists. Everybody else is doing that. Send more emails. So we are doing that, but we've morphed. We're spending 80% of our innovation on this AI tool and on what I call network of networks. So where do they come from?
Yeah.
A network of networks.
I love it. I love it. And it reminds me a lot of affiliate marketing in the sense that if they get that discount, it's a more of an incentive and they're doing the work for you essentially. They're bringing in more and more and it can really work out.
Yeah.
Last question before we jump off and wrap up. If you had a magic wand you could wave to solve one business problem, what would that be?
I would have 10 more managing partners like a guy named Dave Lynn, who is my most productive, and he's such a hard worker and he's so passionate about what we do. He's such a great people leader. And if I could find 10 more like him, I'd be 50 times the size. He's a 5X. And it's all about great people who, finding the great people that can collaborate and share your vision. And I actually think this AI technology is going to completely change the game for my customers, for my business, and also the people but I think the one thing I'd wave is I'd say, give me 5 more people like him, 10 more people like him.
And that's it. Getting those 18 players can make a massive difference to any business, right? And having 10 more of those, well, the sky's the limit, right? So, John, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for sharing your time, your insight. It's been a really enjoyable conversation. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you very much. And good luck to your listeners. And hopefully this will be interesting to them. And any of you who want to come, you can ask for a 20% discount because you know Saeed.
Yeah, fantastic. Brilliant. Appreciate it, John. Have a good one.
Cheers.